We are going to restore the Canadian promise so that anyone who works hard gets a great life and a beautiful house on a safe street, protected by brave troops under our proud Canadian flag.
If you want someone that's going to fight for you and your family, vote NDP. If you want someone that's going to fight for housing that's actually affordable for you and your family, vote NDP.
Canada literally has given me everything. My family, my education, and my values. And in return, I'm ready to give everything for Canada.
2 weeks down, 3 to go. We're heading into the midway point of the snap election campaign with public opinion polls, including the latest tracking for CTV from Nanos Research, showing that the Liberals are somewhat cementing their lead. The Tories, however, are still drawing crowds of thousands to their rallies. Here to talk about the state of the race and what to watch for next week is our election edition of the Scrum. Najoud Almalise is a reporter with the Globe and Mail in their Ottawa bureau. Joël Denis Belvance is the Ottawa bureau chief for La Presse. And next to him, Nick Nanos is the chief data scientist and founder of Nanos Research. Hi, everybody. Happy Sunday.
Hello.
Nick, you've got some overnight numbers that show the Liberals ticking down a little bit in the NDP, really down. What do you take from that? Help explain it.
It's interesting, Vashi, when we look at the Liberal trend line, they've had a double-digit lead at one point in the election, coming off of the Trump Liberation Day, where people were focused on Carney and Trump. Coming off of that, what we're seeing is that double-digit lead is now down to 6 percentage points. Interestingly, a couple things. First of all, the NDP at 8%, it's like a 25-year low for the NDP. So bad news for Jagmeet Singh and the New Democrats. But, you know, when we look at what's happened in terms of the narrowing of the race, it's happened primarily in Ontario and Quebec. Liberals down, they're ahead in Quebec, down a little bit, Bloc up. Liberals down a little bit in Ontario, still ahead. Conservatives up in the province of Ontario. That's a key battleground for Pierre Poilievre. It looks like if this election is not about Donald Trump and people thinking about the cost of living and all that other kind of stuff, it looks like that environment favors the Conservatives. If the focus is on Trump and responding to Trump, it looks like that environment favors the Liberals. So maybe this is going to be a battle about what is this election about?
And what's so interesting, JD, is that often the answer to that at any one point during the week of the campaign, for example, that just took place, is informed by something totally beyond the control of the campaign or the agenda that the leaders are setting. And by that, I mean Donald Trump stands up in the Rose Garden with a Bristol board this week.
And it just shows that whenever a party makes a promise, announces the policies, that is relegated to, you know, a second rank. So I would say that if I were a political strategist, to all the parties, I would hold a press conference at the end of the campaign and say, here's what we're proposing, because it seems that what we have said is falling on deaf ears because of Mr. Trump's actions. And it just shows that the political parties have to work hard to get people's attention other than what Mr. Trump is doing and imposing on Canada. So that remains to me the ballot question, how to face Mr. Trump. And I expect it to be the same until the end of that campaign.
There was this, you know, there's all this talk. Will the Conservatives pivot? Will they not? I know they get annoyed by even the term of it. But this week, there was every single party, right after the announcement was made, responding the next morning with specific, you know, one in the capacity as prime minister, yes, but the others with very specific policy, for example, aimed at the auto sector, very directly talking about how Trump is letting everyone down. What did you make of that, Najoud?
I think Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre both gave similar responses on a policy level to Donald Trump and the economic hurt that will come from the tariffs that are placed on Canada. It seems like Mark Carney is trying to also make the argument that the relationship between Canada and the U.S. will never be the same, regardless of whether there are reciprocal tariffs or not. And so it'll be interesting to see, now that we know we have a little bit more certainty on what the tariff landscape looks like for the time being, how do both leaders, I guess, lean into or not on this idea of the world is changing. U.S.-Canada relations will never be the same. We need to have eyes wide open to that reality. And that's what Mark Carney's leaning into. I don't know what Pierre Poilievre will do in terms of whether he would want to lean into that. And even though there's no tariffs, we are seeing that people's stock portfolios and savings are taking a hit. And so I think Donald Trump will continue to be relevant throughout the campaign.
You know, I agree with that 100%. I'd like to add something. Voters are fundamentally risk adverse. They will look at the choices and not necessarily think about who they might like, what parties they might look at. They might not even think about the policies. They might think, to your point, who is the least risky in this environment when it comes to the economy? Who is the least risky when it comes to Donald Trump?
What about the pitch, just quickly to follow up, that they're making, that the Conservatives, I think, are making, and James Moore kind of elucidated this in the earlier part of our show, but that if it is permanent, you don't want another 10 years like the 10 years before. Does that message have a possibility of?
I think so, and I think we're probably at some point people are not just going to be thinking about who they want to lead the country, but how strong or weak a mandate they'd like them to have. And, I think there's a good case for both the Liberals and the Conservatives to say, you know what, we need a strong mandate. And for them to duke it out. It'll be interesting to see how that actually plays out, because the NDP are getting squeezed, the Bloc are being squeezed, the Greens are being squeezed. It's coming down to a two-party race, much more so than past elections.
And the levels of support in your poll, for example, Nick, JD, are very high 30s and low 40s, depending on the day.
The Liberals are doing well, but the Tories have not bleeding support.
No.
I haven't seen that at all. And that's surprising in this election because of the context. And Nick was talking about the majority. I expect the leaders to make the case during the debates in French and in English. Why do we need a strong mandate? Either for the Conservative or the Liberals, because of the threat coming south of the border. And we can't afford anymore shenanigans, negotiations between the parties to ensure the political survival of a minority government in Ottawa. We've had a few over the last 20 years. I think it's time to have a strong mandate for any political party in Ottawa.
And that, again, kind of sidelines the NDP from the conversation. Najud, the last question to you. If the trend continues the way it is for them, Nick's polling, for example, seat projections show that even Jagmeet Singh's seat in BC is competitive, where he has the Liberals, or as of Friday, leading. Is there like a wild card that they pull at some point? Like, do they get to a point where they have to do something dramatic, or do you anticipate they'll stick to the script?
I mean, you were speaking earlier that the other strategy the NDP could have taken is focusing on the ridings that they currently hold, right? It's clear, campaigning on the idea that you're going to become the next prime minister when the polling very much suggests that Canadians are not looking at you in that lens. They're very scared about what's going to happen over the next several years and are looking for a prime minister to be able to handle that. I'm waiting to see whether Jagmeet Singh at some point will have to reconcile with the polling and change strategy and maybe focus on several key seats that they think they can hold on to.
Make that pivot, some might call it. Okay? Oh my gosh, everyone drink. All right, have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks, everyone.